And the only person's salvation you should be worrying about today is your own. We're not here today to say, that guy isn't good like I am, and that guy's not going to heaven. Because even though we're going to talk about salvation and try to understand, all we know about salvation is what has been revealed to us through the Bible and through the church. Okay? We know about salvation, not inventing stories. And we're going to talk about that. Because what most people do is invent stories. That's the people on the plane. They said, I think this. Or I'm pretty sure this. We're not inventing stories today. Today we want to see what God has revealed to us about salvation through two mechanisms. The Bible and through church. Let me ask you a question. If someone hasn't been given the church and been given the Bible, do you think their judgment will be the same as someone who has? To whom much is given, much is required. People in the Old Testament were not given the church. Okay? So they're not judged based on what the church teaches. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay? People in different places are given different things, and you are judged according to what you've been given. You have been given the Bible, and you have been given the church, and you will learn today what God has revealed to us about our salvation through the Bible and through church. But I'm going to tell you right off the bat, there's like asterisk exceptions. Like we know in the Synaxarium, I don't remember which saint, I was trying to look it up, but I couldn't find it. About a lady who was on a ship, okay, and the ship was going to drown or whatever, something bad was going to happen to the ship, okay, and she had a baby on the ship, and she wasn't going to get to the church, and they were going to die, so she took some blood or something like that and made the sign of the cross and baptized her child in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. When they later got to the church for the kid to be baptized, no one died. They got to the church to be baptized, and the water, I don't know the exact details, so forgive me if I misquoted here. The water would like freeze up, or something would happen where the baby couldn't be baptized. The priest asked, and she told him the story about the ship, and so there's an example of that baptism was accepted. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is, God gives us things, and based on what we're given, we are judged. So don't judge your neighbor. Don't judge the kid born under a rock on top of the Himalayas. Don't judge the people in the church down the street. Here to judge one person today, and that's you. And me, of course. With that said, let's jump in. Salvation has two components, a you part and a God part. Of the two parts, which is bigger? Clearly God's part is bigger. Philippians 2:12 is a good verse to understand what salvation looks like. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. The term work out is an important term there. If I want, let's compare salvation to like muscles. Okay, because he says work out, so we'll get in a workout kind of a mood. So work out, there's two components. God gives me muscles, and then I exercise those muscles to make them bigger. Okay? But if I exercise day and night and day and night and day and night, but God hasn't given me any muscles, you can't have one without the other. So we can't take for granted the fact that God gives it to us, but then by the same token, just giving you the muscles isn't going to make them unless you work them out. So you see how it works? God gives us salvation, but then we have to do our part in working it out, in exercising it. God gives it to us, which is 99% of it, to be honest, and then we have to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. We'll talk about God's part, and we'll talk about our part. God's part is big, but for the sake of today, I'm going to run through it kind of quickly, just so we have a basic understanding, but I'm going to skip a lot of the details because I want to focus more on our part. Okay? God's part, if you want to summarize it in one word, is redemption. Okay? God's part is redemption. What that means is the following. This is salvation 101 in a nutshell. God created Adam and Eve, and He created them in His image and in His likeness. And He created them to live with Him forever and ever and ever and ever. Okay? And they were created in a good world. Everything was good. Everything was great. Adam and Eve were given a thing called free will. And they had that free will was given so they could choose to love God of their own free will and worship Him and to serve Him voluntarily, not by force. Unfortunately, they used that gift of God, of free will, to commit sin. Don't touch the tree. They touched the tree. They ate. When they committed sin, something happened. Their nature was corrupted. Okay? Their nature was corrupted. The nature which had been inside them now became tainted by sin. And it wasn't the same as what it used to be. That's why they had to leave the garden. And that's why we have sicknesses, illnesses, and all kinds of problems in the world. Because the nature inside them which was corrupted got passed along to me and you. Okay, because they're eventually our fathers and our mothers. Okay, so they passed along that nature. It's like a mother who has AIDS. and then the child is born with AIDS. What did the child do to get AIDS? Nothing. But his mom had AIDS, and she passed it along to him. That's what happened to us. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 3 says, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lusts of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. By nature. Okay? By nature, we were children of wrath. King David says the same thing in Psalm 51. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. We were not born perfect. Okay? We were born with a corrupted nature, which the nature, like the word, you know how we say naturally? Like naturally we do this. So because of our nature was corrupted, naturally we tend towards sin. Naturally. Okay, that's our nature, is to sin. You put someone in a simple example. You put someone on the road, you honk at them, their nature is to honk back. It's our nature. It's not to say, God bless you, thank you very much. Peace of God be with you all. Nature is, if you hit me, I hit you back. It's my nature. It's inside me. And we can overcome our nature, and we'll talk about that in a second, but my nature is, if there's a $20 bill there, that's my nature. Now, some people, like I said, train themselves, and we'll talk about that in a second, but naturally, we're like that. That's a little bit different than some other churches' understanding of the fall of man. Other churches, okay, will teach about like original sin, and we're born with an original sin, and we're baptized to forgive us of the original sin. It's not what the Orthodox churches teaches exactly. Okay? We're not born with an original sin. We're born with a nature which tends towards sin. Got that? Okay, it wouldn't make sense that God says, someone sinned 10 million years ago, so you're going to pay the price for it. No. Someone sinned, and their nature was corrupted, and they passed it along to us, the corrupted nature. What's the result of the corrupted nature? Well, this is what's called the divine dilemma now takes place. Okay? The divine dilemma, as said by St. Athanasius, which is that God created man to live with him. But man sinned, and now their nature is corrupted, and they tend towards sin. Well, the result of sin is always the same thing, is death. Genesis chapter 3, verse 2. Before they sinned, they knew this. So God didn't like pull a fast one. God made it very clear to them. When the woman said to the serpent, when the serpent was saying, come eat this nice juicy fruit. And she said, wait a minute. We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. No fast ones, no curveballs. God said, you can live with me forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Don't touch that. You touch that, you're going to die. Romans 6:23 says the same thing, that the wages of sin is death. Now God has a problem. I created man because I love man to live with me forever, because I want him to be with me. I love him. Man sinned. I told man, if you sin, you will die. Now I have two options. Break my word, which I can't because I'm good. Okay? Break my word and be a liar, which I can't because God can't. Or live without man for all of eternity. Rock in a hard place. God was stuck. When you have a big problem, the solution has to be big. And the solution was bigger than the problem, which is, I'm using the terms carefully here, the incarnation of the Logos. Okay? The solution to the problem was the incarnation of the Logos. God, the infinite and the eternal, takes flesh, becomes man, lives a sinless life, does all righteousness, fulfills all the law, suffers, dies, buried, rises, ascends. Sent us the Holy Spirit. And through that, there's the problem is solved. How can I say the problem is solved? I put three things here in quotes, or in parentheses, okay, about the incarnation of the Logos. I told you that our sin, God made a covenant with man, that if you do this, you live forever. If you do this, you die. Okay, and man sinned. And man's sin was against God. The size of the sin is directly correlated to the person offended by the sin. Okay? Because the sin was against God, it was a bigger sin.